This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with a huge daily wrestling news update. I'll start with WWE's filing their official response to the Janelle Grant lawsuit. I will also go through their response at the end of this, but I'll give you the short version of it now and we'll go through the response when I get through the other news. They also want to go to arbitration like Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis. Vince McMahon's mistake was basically instead of stopping paying Janelle Grant without going to arbitration first, like he did, which he says is due to Janelle Grant talking about the situation when the whole point of her getting a settlement and paying and getting that non-disclosure agreement was for her not to disclose this information. Vince is saying he disclosed it. But basically, instead of just not paying her, he should have gone to arbitration about that. She hasn't produced her side of these text messages. She's only produced Vince's side, where apparently there's another side to these text messages where it's alleged that she was being just as naughty as Vince. She's going to have to reveal those likely if this goes to court or an arbitration. This affair between her and Vince went on for 3 years. She's alleging that she was just living with her ex-boyfriend at this time and not actually having an affair, which sounds bizarre to go on for that long. And of course, there was other people she had sex with other than just Vince, such as Johnny Ace. But we'll go through the response at the end of this, but WWE provided very valid reasons why this should go to arbitration rather than a lawsuit, which of course Janelle Grant's lawyer is going to have to argue that. WWE apparently paid 5 mil, or Las Vegas paid WWE $5 million to have or have WrestleMania there. There is some outlandish claims related to that where Vegas is claiming that there's going to be 144,000 hotel rooms bought due to this, and 180,000 people are going to come to the city. I mean, that's insinuating that it's going to be different people coming to Vegas for each event because in reality there's going to be about 60,000 or so people there both nights. And like a lot of people are going to be from Vegas and within driving distance of Vegas. And a lot of people come as families. It's not like there's going to be like everyone's going to be buying one person hotel room. So some of those claims are a little strange. NXT did a 0.18 rating this week. Raw did a 0.53. Both were down. Related to Kevin Sullivan's health, I did get a message relayed to me from both Kevin Sullivan and his wife. Unsure if he's still in the hospital or not, but it's not a life or death situation. Um, Whatever the health issue is, which remains undisclosed, which Conrad Thompson talked about it yesterday, and John Paz, his Taskmaster Talks podcast co-host, talked about it. Whatever he's in the hospital for, it's not life or death, and it's unknown if he's still in there or not. But according to him and his wife, he's going to be all right. So good to hear that. Ariel Hawani did an interview with one of the chairmans from the Saudi Arabian entertainment group, and they are basically saying that either the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania is going to be in Saudi Arabia in 2026 or 2027. Right now, WWE is doing 2 events there a year and getting $50 million per show, so they'd be getting a massive amount of money to bring Royal Rumble or WrestleMania there. There's only been 2 WrestleManias outside of the US, which have both been in Toronto. One Royal Rumble outside of the US, the very first Royal Rumble in Hamilton at the Cops Coliseum, where WWE rarely, if ever, goes anymore. AEW went there last year and had a terrible crowd, which was actually, I think, Sting's last match in Canada, which Of course, AEW doesn't even announce it as that, which would have drawn extra people. If it wasn't his last match in Canada, it was one of his last matches. Speaking of AEW that constantly false advertises, apparently they advertised that there was going to be a Rampage taping in Washington last night after the Dynamite tapings, and they did not do a Rampage taping. Surprise, surprise. They did just a Dynamite taping. Not that that many people care about Rampage, but why do you false advertise stuff constantly? By the way, it's interesting. I wonder if there's some reason Moxley can't get to Canada. This is just wondering, okay? He no showed every single event in Canada this year that he was advertised on the posters for every single event in Canada. There's been about 6 or 7. He did not do any of them, and yet he WWE or AEW's in Washington this week, and he appeared in Washington. I'm just saying, is that a coincidence? Or is there some reason he can't get into Canada? It's strange. The body cam police footage of Liv Morgan's arrest has come out. I put the link to it in the description. Apparently, her boyfriend is Uncle Howdy, aka Bo Dallas. Eddie Kingston might very well have a broken leg. He's being replaced on the upcoming Dominion pay-per-view by Darby Allin, who apparently is still limping and was recently hit by a bus. It's weird that they're letting, I mean, for instance, we just talked about John Moxley. He was on the New Japan the same night as the AEW show in Vancouver last week, despite being advertised for the AEW show. It's almost like they care more about New Japan than AEW. Eddie Kingston might have broken his leg on this New Japan show. Like, if you're gonna, it's dangerous to let your wrestlers who are under contract wrestle for other companies and then get injured. It's almost like they prioritize, because Tony Khan is such a New Japan mark, other companies over their own companies, which I find bizarre. And I did listen to Wrestling Observer Radio today, and it's strange that like they're replacing Kingston with Darby Allin, who is also just getting over an injury. And as Dave Meltzer said, it's not like he's The Rock and you should rush him back, even though he might not be fully healed, because he's going to make a difference on how many people buy the pay-per-view. And there's so many people in AEW sitting out doing nothing. I mean, Ricky Starks recently publicly complained about it. They haven't used him for a long time either. There's so many people just sitting at home in AEW. I mean, Jake the Snake, we heard he was re-signed a couple months ago. I don't think he's appeared since. Jim Ross re-signed. He's done very few appearances. Um, but whatever. At least they're getting money to do nothing, which a lot of us would kill for. NXT will not be changing nights when they switch to the CW network this fall. That's official. So let's go through this, and I'm only going to skim through it. This WWE response to the Janelle Grant lawsuit. I'll share the screen on it. Hold on. Give me a second here. Let's go through this WWE response to Janelle Grant lawsuit, this official response that they have filed. I'll make it bigger here, or I guess I can't make it bigger. So they're responding to the civil action. Let's go through it here. They're basically saying that Janelle is bringing an action against Vincent Kennedy, McMahon, John Laurinaitis, and WWE. The legend, while employed at WWE, she was subject to physical and emotional abuse, sexual assault, sex trafficking by McMahon and Laurinaitis. WWE is disputing Grant's allegations and are saying that the dispute cannot be heard in court because Grant agreed to arbitration in her claims. WWE is moving to compel this to arbitration. They're saying that Grant has no claims actionable in this court because the separation and non-disclosure agreement she signed with Vince McMahon and the WWE, the monetary benefits is which she coincidentally accepted and retained, contains an arbitration provision that unambiguously precludes this court from adjudicating her claims. In particular, Grant agreed that the sole and exclusive legal method to resolve any and all disputes and or controversies is to commence binding arbitration under the Federal Arbitration Act. The language is clear and unconditional. Not only are Grant's allegations squarely within the scope of the arbitration provision, but the agreement also expressly commits the arbitration to arbitrate the issue of arbitrarily itself. Accordingly, this court should enforce the parties' agreed upon method of aggressing Grant's claims and compel this action to arbitration. Then it's going in to the background here. I'm going to try and make this bigger. I know it's hard to see. The WWE disputes Grant's allegations, but for the purpose of this motion only, we assume the truth of facts alleged in the complaint. The complaint also incorporates by reference and attaches the agreement dated January 28, 2002 between Grant McMahon and WWE. Grant alleges that she met McMahon in March 2019, and soon after, McMahon promised her a yet to be determined role in WWE. McMahon and Grant began a sexual relationship in May 2019, and on June 17, 2019, Grant began working in WWE's legal department at an entry-level position as an administrator coordinator with a starting salary of $75,000. On February 10, 2020, she was temporarily relocated to the XFL workforce. On or around January 25th, 2021, Grant was reassigned to support a high-ranking hire in WWE's legal department. In early March 2021, Grant was transferred to the talent relations department, where she worked as a director of operations and reported to the head of the department, John Laurinaitis. Grant worked in talent relations for the remainder of her tenure in WWE. The agreement, according to the complaint, in early January 2022, McMahon told Grant that his wife had found out about their relationship and threatened to divorce him. McMahon allegedly told, by the way, um, she McMahon is still not divorced from Linda, and John Laurinaitis apparently is still not divorced from his wife. McMahon allegedly told Grant that if she left WWE and signed an NDA, his wife would not leave him, and Grant would avoid reputational harm. The complaint claims that McMahon initially offered Grant $1 million in exchange for the non-disclosure agreement. Grant allegedly told McMahon that $1 million was not enough, and McMahon ultimately agreed to pay Grant $3 million in installments. On or about January 19th, 2022, Grant retained counsel to help her navigate her separation from WWE and to negotiate um, the proposed non-disclosure agreement. Grant's counsel actively represented her interests during the course of the negotiations. On January 28, 2022, McMahon and Grant executed the six-page agreement titled the Confidentiality Settlement Agreement, General Release, and Covenant Not to Sue. Grant and McMahon both signed the agreement, with McMahon signing both on his own behalf and in his capacity as chairman on behalf of WWE, which he was at that time. They are now going to the relevance of the agreement. So these are sections of the non-disclosure agreement. Here's number one: Grant's obligations, resignation from WWE, confidentiality, and non-disparagement. Grant agreed to resign from her employment with WWE upon execution of the agreement. And in the section titled Grant's Consideration, Representation, and Warranties to the WWE and Vince McMahon, Grant agreed to keep confidential her agreement with McMahon and the existence and terms of the agreement, and not to disparage McMahon or the WWE. 2. McMahon's payment obligation. In exchange for Grant's promise of confidentiality, McMahon assumed exclusive responsibility for paying Grant in installments over a 4-year period, a total of $3 million. At the first installment, McMahon agreed to pay Grant $1 million within 10 days of the execution of the agreement. McMahon committed to making further payments of $500,000 each year on February 1st for the next 4 years, provided all confidentiality obligations of Grant under this agreement are complied with in ensuing years. However, in the event of any disclosure by Grant of the matters required to be kept confidential under this agreement, the agreement provides that all monies previously paid to Grant pursuant to this agreement shall be returned to McMahon. In addition, the monetary payments by McMahon, the agreement provides as additional consideration to Grant that WWE will provide a positive evaluation and recommendation to any possible employer of Grant via Laurinaitis or other WWE employees. The mutual release is Section 3. The parties of the agreement, including WWE, provide a mutual release of any and all potential claims related to Grant and McMahon's relationship and Grant's employment at WWE. And the Grant's release language reads, and this is relevant to her allegedly breaking the agreement. Except for any rights under this agreement and otherwise stated herein, Grant hereby agrees to release, remiss, and forever discharge by these presents does for herself and here's executors and administrators release, remiss, and forever discharge McMahon, WWE, and the present, former, and future directors, officers, employees, and agents and representatives of WWE personally as directors, officers, and representatives of WWE from all manner of actions and actions caused of actions, sums of money, covenants, contracts, controversies, agreements, promises, damages, claims, and demands whatsoever in law or equity, or that she ever had, may have, or now as executors or administrators can or shall may have of a result of in connection with her employment relationship with WWE, the termination of that employment relationship, and all matters involved with her relationship with Vince McMahon and WWE personnel, and whether known or unknown, asserted or unasserted, suspected or unsuspected, which she may have as a result of any act which occurred at any time up to and including the date of her execution of this agreement. This agreement also provides that Grant will not cause and has not caused to be filed any legal actions, administrative proceedings, arbitrations, or changes of that matter whatsoever relating to McMahon or the WWE concerning matters within the scope of this agreement. Grant further covenants and agrees that she will forever forbear from pursuing legal proceedings except if necessary to enforce this agreement, and that she will not in any other way make additional demands or claims against McMahon or WWE. By signing this agreement, Grant acknowledges that she will have waived any rights she may have to pursue or bring a lawsuit or make legal claims against McMahon and or WWE and or any of its distractors, officers, employees, agents, and representatives. McMahon and WWE provide a reciprocal release to Grant. McMahon and WWE individually and jointly for and in consideration of representations, warranties, and covenants of Grant contained herein, hereby release and forever discharge Grant of hers, executors, administrators, successors, and assigns from any and all disputes and causes of actions, claims, demands, suits, damages, attorney fees, expensive debts, contract agreements, and any and all other claims of WWE or other nature whatsoever against Grant, whether known or unknown, or whether asserted or unasserted from the beginning of time to the date of the execution of this agreement, which McMahon and WWE might have or could have claimed against Grant. And here's something very interesting. Point number 4, agreement to arbitrate. The agreement provides that any dispute between parties must be resolved through informal discussions and failing resolution by arbitration. So she signed off on this. Specifically, the parties must first attempt to resolve their disputes informally. In the event of any dispute arising under or out of this agreement, its construction, interpretation, application, performance, or breach, the parties agree to first attempt to resolve such disputes informally and prior to taking any formal legal actions to resolve such disputes. If the parties are unable to resolve their disputes informally, the matter must be adjudicated in arbitration pursuant to the rules of the American Arbitration Association. In the event any such dispute cannot be resolved informally, all parties hereby agree that the sole exclusive legal method to resolve any and all disputes and or controversies is to commence binding arbitration under the Federal Arbitration Act pursuant to the procedures of the American Arbitration Association, to do so by sealed proceedings which preserve the confidential and private nature of this agreement. Servability in any part of this agreement is found to be void. If any part of this agreement is found to be void or unenforceable, the agreement servability provisions provide that the remainder of the agreement will remain in effect and enforceable. In the event that any provision of this agreement is held to be void or unenforceable by any arbitration panel or court reviewing the arbitration decision, the remaining provision shall nevertheless be binding, provided, however, if any of the confidentiality obligations of this agreement are ever contended to be unenforceable by Grant or are found to be unenforceable by any tribunal. Grant agrees that she shall return all monies paid pursuant to this agreement to McMahon. That is interesting. Additional repercussions. Finally, Grant explicitly represented that she is able to read the language and to understand the meaning of this agreement. Moreover, Grant represented that she has and understands this agreement and the effect of it, and that her attorney, Mr. John Shapiro, has explained it to her. Post-agreement events. Following the execution of this agreement and pursuant to the Section V, McMahon wired the initial payment of $1 million to Grant on February 4th, 2022. McMahon also made additional payments not provided for in the agreement, wired Grant $10,000 to cover her attorney fees in connection with this agreement, and paid for certain of her medical expenses until April 15th, 2022. On February 9th and 10th, 2022, less than a week after receiving McMahon's initial $1 million payment, Grant provided notice to Laurinaitis and the WWE's Human Resource Department that she was leaving WWE. On March 30th, 2022, McMahon's counsel notified Grant's counsel of an anonymous email about the relationship between Miss Grant and Mr. McMahon and Laurinaitis. Subsequently, in June and July 2022, various media stories were published regarding the matter of McMahon's multiple non-disclosure agreements with various women. Under the agreement, McMahon's second scheduled payment of $500,000 would have been due on February 1st, 2023, on the condition that all confidentiality obligations of Grant under this agreement and complied with. So they're basically saying that the second payment was only due if the confidentiality agreements were applied with by Grant. Grant alleges that McMahon did not make this payment or any subsequent payments without first notifying WWE or attempting to resolve this dispute informally or through arbitration as required by Section X of the agreement. Grant files a complaint on January 25th, 2024, and initiated a lawsuit. So there's the basic problems. McMahon did not file. McMahon did not go to arbitration related to Grant allegedly breaking the terms of the agreement, and Grant also filed a lawsuit rather than go to arbitration related to the terms of the agreement. WWE goes on to say the action should be compelled in arbitration. The agreement, which Grant coincidentally negotiated, so she also negotiated this agreement, signed and accepted the benefits of, contains a clear and unambiguous arbitration provision. That provision requires not only that all of Grant's claims asserted here be decided in arbitration, but also that the threshold questions of the arbitrarily of those claims be decided by an arbitrator. The court shall grant WWE's motion to compel arbitration and order that the claims proceed in arbitrations as the parties intended to and as the agreement requires. Under the Federal Arbitration Act, written provisions in a contract to settle by arbitration and controversy therefore arising out of such a contract shall be valid, irrevocable, and enforceable. A party aggravated by a failure, neglect, or refusal to another party to arbitrate under a written agreement for arbitration may petition for an order directing that such arbitration proceed in a matter provided for in such agreement. The FAA leaves no place for the exercise of discretion by a district court, but instead mandates that the district court shall direct the parties to proceed to arbitration on issues as to which an arbitration agreement has been signed. So you can look this up online and read the rest of it, but basically the terms of the non-disclosure agreement, according to the WWE, um, basically says the court thinks that the court should grant WWE's motion to compel arbitration um, for those reasons. So I do believe that this will probably go to arbitration because the non-disclosure settlement and agreement stated that that everybody signed off on that it would go to arbitration if anything arised, and she can't get around that. But we'll see how it plays out. Well, the reason why he didn't pay her off is because the whole point of the non-disclosure agreement was for her to not talk about it, and allegedly somehow all the information leaked out. So, I mean, I'm not saying I don't know what happened or what didn't happen or how much truth from either sides is true, but the whole point of the non-disclosure agreement was for her not to talk about it. So, if there's going to be leaks on this, why would you continue to pay this person? And for her, like, I don't understand why she wouldn't just take the money and disappear, but who knows? I don't know the details. I mean, obviously, this is probably going to be resolved in arbitration, and they're probably WWE is probably going to get as much muddying of the waters out as possible before it is resolved in arbitration, as well as AEW. Someone says AEW is not a real business. No, it's basically a toy of a billionaire's son. That's what it comes down to. So we'll keep following this case. The next step is Grant's response to this. Joma, well, thank you for saying I don't read well. Thank you for watching anyways, because you're still making me money. You try reading all of this while reading comments at the same time. I've done pretty well for a guy that only has a high school education in my life, and I thank you for following my page. The whole situation is shady on both sides. The fact that there's only two pictures or three pictures total, and all the pictures look pretty different. That is her in the picture, by the way, and there's no pictures out there of her beyond her 40s. Um, it's all very bizarre. The whole thing's really bizarre. There seems to be shade on both sides, and she has her law degree. Why she never pursued criminal actions on this? She clearly would rather get the money. By the way, you could still pursue a criminal action than a civil action. So it's shady to me that she never pursued a criminal action to begin with. Yeah, she is an actor. CFB station. Yes. I mean, how many people are going to read a log document like that? And it's hard to read online, and I really don't care what you think of me. If it makes you feel better of yourself to insult me, fine. I don't care. I'm just putting all this information out there. You guys can look up the document and read it yourself if you don't like my reading. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.